My next guests are Matt Rhoades and Belinda Dunnick Karge. Matt is an expert and innovator in educational technology and instructional strategy with online blended and traditional in-person classroom settings. With a special education background, Dr. Rhoades co-taught for many years at the high school level in the areas of English, math, and social studies. He continues to co-teach regularly with coaching teachers and presenting professional development. As a practicing technology and instructional leader, trainer, integrationist, and coach in adult education, K-12, higher education, he develops instructional integrations of edtech tools with research-based strategies to drive instruction. He is a coach and professional learning specialist for new and experienced teachers within the consortium at a local university. He is also a doctoral dissertation chair who coaches doctoral students to conduct their research, write, and defend their dissertations. His 8 books focus on integrating instructional strategies with edtech and AI tools to amplify student learning within in-person, online, and blended learning classrooms. His latest books include Crush It from the Start, 50 Tips for New Teachers, Instruction Without Borders, Enhance Your Teaching Strategies with Technology Tools in Any Setting, Amplify Learning, a Global Collaborative Series, and many more. He also has a podcast, Navigating Education, which discusses all topics related to education and instruction. Belinda Karge is a professor in the doctoral studies program at Concordia University Irvine and a professor emeritus at California State University. She taught both general education and special education and served in administrative roles in elementary and high school prior to teaching in higher education. Her interest in co-teaching began when she originally was in the classroom. She has co-taught at several levels. Her latest book is Watch, Listen, Ask, Learn: How School Leaders Can Create an Inclusive Environment for Students with Disabilities. She's made numerous presentations to international, state, and local groups of schools and district employees and has keynoted at several conferences. Belinda's PhD is in quantitative methods, special education, and educational psychology, and her master's degree is in special education and reading. She received both from the University of California, Riverside. Well, welcome to the podcast, Belinda and Matt.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah, thanks for having us.
I'll ask each of you this question I start off with. Tell me about a time when you were in the trenches and managed to crawl out. I'll start with you, Matt.
All right, well, this semester, I was co-teaching, team teaching in class with graduate students, and we had to definitely adjust to meet their needs. We had to adjust the number of assignments where I think that we made it a little bit too ambitious, and we had to kind of differentiate and modify to meet their needs. So that was definitely navigating that with a group of students that I haven't taught before, and definitely it's just something that's recent where we had to really, we had the course already built out, but then we had to revise the course as we went to meet the students' needs. So that was definitely the most recent piece of when I've been co-teaching and really had to sit back and revise. And that happens quite often in co-teaching when you are with a new partner as well as a new group of students, and you may have something already planned out in the past, but ultimately you need to go back and revise and meet the needs of your students as the course progresses. And so that was definitely my short story for being in the trenches lately.
How about you, Belinda? What was a time you were in the trenches and managed to crawl out?
I would love to go way back. I started my career as a general ed high school math and science teacher, and very quickly realized I wanted to move forward with my education. And a great advisor said, you should move down and teach elementary. So my first year teaching elementary, I had this little first grader that was bigger than I was. I mean, this huge kid, and he was crazy behavior wise. I mean, it was so difficult. And I was in Riverside County, and I reached out to a gentleman who I wish I could get in contact with to thank. His name is Dr. Kevin Feldman. And I asked him, he was a program specialist at the time, and I asked him, would you come and assist me. I'm, you know, trying to get this student integrated into general ed classes, but his behavior is beyond anything I've ever worked with. And Kevin came and he said, you know, Belinda, you're going about this all wrong. You're a really good instructor. You need to instruct him. Let's not worry about the behavior. Let's focus on instruction. And
Yeah.
seriously, from that day forward, that has really framed my career is let's focus on instruction because when kids are engaged, when kids enjoy learning, everything comes into place. And that's exactly what happened with this little guy. It was like once I started really focusing on instruction with him, he was having so much fun with school. I mean, even his parents like reached out to me and were like, "What's going on at school? He wants to come now?"
Yeah.
You know? And it was all related to Kevin giving me that little hint. He's like, "Belinda, focus on instruction." So,
Yeah, and I think a lot of us have those stories at the beginning of our career where there is a student that we're not able to reach, but there is some type of a breakthrough. So
yeah.
I wanted to discuss the book you both co-wrote, Co-Teaching Evolved Partnership Strategies for an Equitable, Inclusive, and Tech-Powered Classroom. So you can both talk a little bit about the book and strategies and how they work and how to incorporate them in different scenarios.
Yeah, so we took this book and took from 11 co-teaching strategies that Belinda's been researching and working through her entire career, and we really looked at them and looked at how can they be integrated into all K-12 classroom settings, while also integrating the technology piece, as well as looking at the partnership themselves and how can we plan for these incorporating these strategies along with a wide variety of curriculum and student needs. And we really kind of took what was actually happening in classes in 2023, 2024, and incorporated it into this book to create this, modern perspective of how co-teaching can happen using these research-based co-teaching strategies.
We were working with teams who've been together for a while. And,
Okay.
you know, once co-teaching teams have been together for a while, they get stalemated on, you know, the traditional co-teaching, the five kind of Marilyn Friend, Lynn Cook, Wendy Markowski all have the five kind of basics for co-teaching. So part of the venture here was adding and really looking at other ways these strong teams could build out. And then what we've learned along the way is, of course, the new teams like it too, because sometimes just using role play as a model for co-teaching or using a conversation as a model for co-teaching is much stronger than, say, parallel teaching, where we're dividing the class in two. The other thing that I have learned from Matt is his amazing ability to integrate all things technology. And what we tried to do was build into this book, that's the part of the evolved, is a whole bunch of tech stuff and just really encouraging people to scan the QR codes, to look at our videos, look at our reproducibles, and really spend some time because we believe it pushes the button. We believe it pushes forward traditional co-teaching or what the literature says about co-teaching and really gets people to a place where they're using AI, they're using tech tools, they're really moving ahead with their teaching and again with their instruction.
So you mentioned a little bit about AI. So how has co-teaching evolved over the last couple of years with AI?
Can
I
I
mean,
tell
I
my
think
favorite story, Matt?
yeah, go ahead. Go ahead.
So one of my very favorite stories is Matt and I were doing a face-to-face presentation, and we did a carousel activity. And a carousel is where people are divided into groups and they walk around a room. And in our case, they put information on posters. Well, Matt takes a picture of each one of the like six posters, and within minutes, drops it in AI, and the AI tool has now taken what they wrote on those posters during that activity and provided that for the teachers. And that was so much fun for me to see. And it was so much fun for the teachers to really see how AI can enhance. And this particular group of people I'd been working with over the course of a year. And so we did that in about February. And it was so much fun because like in April and May, when we were getting back together and I was saying, so what are things you've learned this year? And almost everybody talked about using the carousel in their classroom and magically, using AI to pull together the language of their students. And one administrator even shared she used it during a staff meeting for teachers who are very leery of AI and was able to show them very quickly what a great tool it can be for something like that to enhance your instruction.
Mhm. Matt, what would you like to say about how AI has changed it?
I mean, I think that it can help with the workflow of planning instruction and differentiating instruction. I think it takes off a lot of the workload, but also you can really differentiate it to meet your students' needs much quicker than you could in the past. I think that when you're using a lot of these tools now, my favorite types of tools are where you can conduct a lot of formative assessment, but they're on what I call digital mini whiteboards. There's
Mhm.
tools like CurryPod and Snorkel, for example, that um, I work with a lot with teachers. But what they do is provide students with personalized feedback based on the problems or type of content they're working with. And teachers can see that in real time, but also the AI can give them personalized feedback along with the teacher seeing the trends in the classroom so that then they can possibly even stop the class and then provide just in time instruction. So you can do it during guided practice, at the beginning of class of that lesson or at the very end. So those are kind of my few favorite tips and tricks with it.
Okay.
Also, to go back to Matt's comment about pre-planning, it's so
Mhm.
awesome when you can start something electronically and then add the standards and then add what you're thinking about teaching and drop all of that in AI and let AI do the magic of starting the process of thinking about what your lesson plan will look like. It just saves so much time because if we do that, then the team can get together and look at what's there as a starting point. They're not starting from scratch. And so the lessons are richer, the instruction is richer. There's more time to focus on assessment. We're not spending hours and hours and hours looking at standards and trying to figure out what the heck we're going to come up with for the teaching piece. So,
Yeah, that's something that is, was spent a lot of time like 10 years ago. I remember looking at state standards and trying to make that fit into the lesson, especially in standards-based grading schools.
yeah.
You also, Matt mentioned to me that you might be doing co-teaching podcast. I know you have your navigating education podcast. So, um, what was the co-teaching podcast about?
Oh, we've just been on a number of co-teaching podcasts. I mean, it's not been one particular topic that we're having across on just one single podcast, but we have, along with yours, I mean, we have at least now 5 to 8 episodes, I think, now of co-teaching podcasts that readers of the book as well as anyone that's interested in co-teaching can get that foundational piece of co-teaching in those podcasts and essentially have that foundation so that they can really jump into co-teaching along with their co-teaching partner. And I think that just providing these foundational podcasts and resources is great, and also for these experienced teams to learn some new tips and tricks to support them in their progression.
Mhm. Matt, you said you have a book that came out recently, 25 Tips for Instructional Coaches and Leaders. In terms of being an instructional coach for co-teachers, what are some of the things that often come up in terms of things that they need help with or direction on?
I just think it depends on the team. So, for example, I think the newer co-teachers, it's not only just about learning the co-teaching strategies, but it's also planning like various like workflows and what exactly are each of the partners going to do in that co-teaching relationship. So, for example, just going into how are they planning their co-teaching and who's going to do what in terms of assessing student progress, contacting parents, um, what day are they planning, how often are they planning, who's going to do what, and really coming down with those essential agreements, and then learning, some of the basic co-teaching strategies just to get them started. I think those are kind of the two most fundamental things that a newer team would. But for more of an experienced team, I'm going to provide Belinda with the opportunity to discuss that.
Well, and often I find while out there coaching that principals say to me, have they really learned all these strategies? And what they're referring to is that when principals are meandering around classrooms, they're seeing a lot of one teach, one support, which really isn't true co-teaching. And so executive coaches and instructional coaches, they need to get in there and really help the teachers figure out how they can use lots of variety in co-teaching strategies. Because what we always say is when there's co-teaching going on, you must see the expertise of both teachers. If you don't, then why are we co-teaching? And so that
Yeah.
becomes really important for an executive coach or an instructional coach to really say to each one of them, you both have gifts. You're both bringing things to the table. Let's use them. How are we going to do that? And really help them walk through the steps of making sure they're truly co-teaching.
Yeah, I think that's something that a lot of schools are not necessarily banking on in terms of getting coaching with the co-teachers, because sometimes the school focuses the instructional coaches on other staff, maybe newer staff, and it is a learning curve. I've done it myself with ELD, so it's not just jumping in there and doing it right away. You need to have some guidance.
Well, and also understanding where the instructional coach is coming from. I've been doing some consultant work for a company called To Teach, which is owned by Wendy Markowski, who's one of the greats in co-teaching. And early on, what would happen is you show up at a school and then for whatever reason, like the teachers aren't there or they're not ready. And you're like, what happened? And it's because there wasn't the communication between whoever set it up and the actual coach. So I've really learned too, as an outside coach, to always talk to the teachers before I show up. And I try to, communicate with them ahead of time and be like, hey, what can I help you with? What kinds of things can we work on? And that seems to also verify and validate the time we have together.
Linda, tell me a little bit about your latest book, Watch, Listen, Ask, Learn: How School Leaders Can Create an Inclusive Environment for Students with Disabilities. We have more students, I think, than ever identified with IEPs, 504s, et cetera. And not all schools are great at meeting every student's needs.
Right. And I really believe it comes from the leadership at the top. And in working the last 10 years with doctoral students who are getting an educational leadership degree, most of them are superintendents, district office folks, principals, assistant principals. And they would often find out I had a background in special ed, and then they'd call and be like, oh my gosh, I have an IEP meeting and it's litigious. What do I do? Or can I move forward? I want to change my school. I want to have a school-wide process. How do I do that? And it was truthfully from those discussions that caused me to write the book. And just really realizing that leaders need to know, they need to understand what to do to keep them out of that litigation. They need to understand what to do to help parents understand the value of inclusion and to help their veteran teachers understand the value. Because sometimes it's your veteran teachers or even your special ed teachers that are kicking back saying, I'm not sure we want to do this, and not realizing the research is so strong. I mean, what we did, in the 90s is so different than what we do now. And how we started inclusion in the 90s is very different than what the research tells us about now. So that's really what the book is trying to do, is help leaders understand how you can move your schools forward and the kinds of activities and supports you can give your teachers.
Matt, you have a podcast, Navigating Education, and a blog. Both of you write a blog on co-teaching evolve. Matt, tell me a little bit about the podcast format, what you discuss, and also kind of what you have on your Substack blog.
Yeah, just on the podcast, we've talked about all things related to education, from instruction, leadership, technology, AI. Sometimes I have a guest, sometimes it's just me doing a monologue. The monologue's been more about how it's been lately. But in terms of my blog, I talk about everything on my blog related to like education, leadership, instruction. My recent blogs have been on one's on like co-teaching as a form of instructional coaching. The instructional coach is actually the co-teacher. That was one of my more recent blog posts, but I have another one related to you can develop your own AI-based apps. and that can help solve educational problems. So that's another thing that I talk about. But really just all things related to education, over 125, 30 plus posts now over the last 5 or 6 years. So it's definitely quite a bit of a repository, but I just enjoy doing it. So it's something that you're constantly learning when you're writing a blog post, and just a way to express your ideas.
And I'll include the link to that in the show notes. Out of everything we've talked about, what would each of you like listeners to remember? Belinda, I'll start with you.
I think primarily we have to remember that we're here for the students. It's
Mhm.
all about the students. You know, sometimes we get lost in what we're doing as the professional, as the teacher, as leader, but it's all about the students. And if I can figure out ways to support those teachers and leaders in terms of their student outcomes, that student outcomes are in a positive direction, that's what it's all about. And that could be social, emotional, as well as academic, or, you know, just touchy-feely types of things, the soft skills, but it
Yeah.
all comes together in one big piece in terms of supporting students.
How about you, Matt? What would you like listeners to remember?
Just ultimately, just, I think everyone should have their own purpose, and having that purpose really just drives you, and it can keep that fire alive in this profession. There's a lot of ups and downs in the profession. I think if you have that purpose, then that will drive you through the leaps and valleys of what exactly you're navigating in your own work, whether you're in the classroom or a coach or school or district leader. I think having that fundamental purpose is something that I think every educator should always think about, as it gets on your very hard days and your easy days.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Well, where can people find you online? I'll start with you, Belinda.
I spend most of my time with LinkedIn. And because I'm still working full-time at a university, I have a presence, of course, at Concordia University Irvine with our program. Those are primarily.
Okay. How about you, Matt?
I can be found on LinkedIn. I do quite a bit of that. Then on just a variety of different social media, Instagram, Facebook, Blue Sky, X. I mean, if you just type in Matt Rhoades or
Okay.
Matthew Rhoades, you're gonna find me. And I just enjoy learning from others on social media. It's where I connect with some of the best educators in the world and researchers in the world, and you gain a lot of different perspectives. So really just enjoy always connecting and learning from everyone.
And you also have a website, Matt?
Yeah, I have matthewrhoads.com is my main website, but then I have our co-teachingevolve.com website,
Okay.
as well as some other websites related to some of my other books. So lots of content for everyone.
Great. I'll make sure I include those in the show notes. Well, it was great having you both on the Out of the Trenches podcast today to talk about co-teaching, instructional coaching, and how we can meet the needs of all learners. Thank you so much for being my guests today.
Our pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you so much.